input delay, monitor lag, precious frames. This is something that's been a hot topic for Street Fighter V over the past month and a half or so. What's up guys, Max here, and I wanted to talk about something that might not make a huge amount of sense for some of you, but for anybody that is into competitive fighting games, it makes all the more sense because it's related to what's happening to Street Fighter V. Street Fighter V, for you guys that don't know, has an inherent 8 frames of lag associated with its core gameplay. Other games like Street Fighter IV were a bit closer to about 5 frames of lag, meaning that there was a total of about 5 frames it took for your input to show up on the screen if you had a good monitor and a really fast one. But Street Fighter V is actually much higher on the regards of many fighting games, especially 3D ones that have to register your inputs and have the characters perform those actions on screen. Now that last sentence, like I said, might not make a lot of sense, but let me tell you my experience with input lag and how it's affected me in the long run. The first time I had a big glimpse of, wow, this game feels like total crap, what happened, was back when I was playing Third Strike on the original Xbox console. At that point, I had that system on a regular CRT television, and then I upgraded to an HD TV. During that process, the Xbox original version of Street Fighter 3, which was on the Street Fighter 15th Anniversary Collection, was also working on the Xbox 360 because it was emulated. So I fired it up, and I was expecting it to play just like it played before. This was many years ago, almost like 10 years ago now. And lo and behold, my game felt like total crap. It was nowhere close to what the original experience I had playing Third Strike on the first Xbox console. After some investigation, I found out that the emulation on the Xbox 360 causes an inherent amount of lag. The game has to process a bit more information to get the image onto the screen. Not to mention, the HD TV I was playing on also introduced a little bit more monitor lag, pretty much stacking all these things on top of each other, making the game feel nothing like I remember. This was my first experience with monitor lag, and it would be a huge deciding factor on what TVs I would play my games on. Now, of course, we can all play on CRT televisions, the old tubes, and this is what Smash players prefer to play on because it's the most definitive way of playing a game. It literally spits the image out, there's no processing, it just shoots light onto the screen. But when you have an HD TV, especially like the ones back in the mid-2000s, which is what I had, these things had to go through several different processes to get the HD image from your system to the screen, whether or not it was upscaling it to like 1080p or 720p or something from a 480p image. There was a lot of things that could happen to cause input delay. Street Fighter V's issue, with its 8 frames of delay, and really it's kind of like an extra 3 frames that a lot of people have had issues with, and even I have noticed very early in Street Fighter's development, this game feels kinda off, like something about it, even when we were playing it on good TVs at trade shows. And the game has always had this problem. It's just become very relevant because a lot of competitive players have used it as a resource of, this game is feeling very weird, I can't react to things because you do need those 3 frames. And I do agree, there's almost zero reason for Street Fighter V to have a huge amount of input lag, almost more than any other fighting game on the market in terms of a 3D game. Now, before I get into my opinion about what's going on and a big thing that Capcom has recently spoken about, if you want the huge detailed logistics about the 8 frames of lag and how it actually affects the game, I highly recommend you check out a couple videos that I link in the description below. One is from Core A Gaming, who did an entire video talking about what this is and kind of breaks everything down of how it affects Street Fighter V. And there's also DisplayLag.com, which does heavy tests on the amount of input lag that comes from a controller or an arcade stick and how long that information takes to eventually get to the screen. There's some fantastic information there, and I don't want to reiterate what they say because what they've done is really good and you should check them out. Now, the inherent thing of input delay has always affected me greatly with fighting games, like I said. In Street Fighter V, I've always looked for the best options to maybe lower my input delay as much as possible. Many people think that you can go to the PC version and that just runs better. It actually has fewer frames of delay on the PC version compared to the PS4 version, which has the 8-frame issue. But in all honesty, the PC version actually has the exact same problem. It is almost identical, the amount of frame delay, unless you go into a actual settings folder and technically change one of the settings in an INI file. But by doing so, you cause a huge amount of VSync problems with the game, and it's going to have screen tearing all over the place, as well as a huge amount of frame pacing issues. It'll make Street Fighter V look like total hell, but it'll bring your input delay back down to something more manageable and comparable to other 3D fighting games, which is about around 4 to 5 frames. The other ongoing argument was maybe this was intentionally done. Other game companies and other games have actually built in input delay inherently into their titles so that they can use it as a buffer window when you go online. There's maybe a frame or two that they could use to actually mask a little bit of lag when you play other people in that online environment. But we never got confirmation of this from the guys at Capcom. This was something that was discovered very early in the life of Street Fighter V, and now has become a big issue with a lot of competitive players in terms of the game and how it feels. But for me personally, and as someone that tries to do my best and everything in my power to get rid of as much input delay and monitor delay for my games as much as possible, it would make zero sense why this is built into the game unless it was for that online purpose, because, man, having any fighting game perform 3 frames sluggishly might not seem a lot, but it absolutely can make a difference. You want your game to feel as precise to the buttons you're pressing as possible. Adding a built-in engine delay that comes from the game can honestly make any game, not just fighting games, feel worse. You want to be directly in control with what's going on the screen with as little in between as possible. For the longest time, we didn't hear anything from Capcom in regards to this, and this what is ending up to be kind of a big problem that Street Fighter has as a core game itself. But really, if you just get used to it, you don't have any frame of reference of it being any better. A point of reference can be a huge thing for a lot of video game related stuff. You think you have it extremely good with what you're having until you're given something that's slightly better. And if that better version is a Street Fighter V that performs about 3 frames faster, then I don't see many people wanting to go back to the older version. There's almost no reason. You're practically adding 3 frames of what would usually be like an online buffer for net play, even in an offline environment. So that just doesn't, once you have a perspective, like, you just don't want to go back unless the PlayStation version is the competitive standard, and that's just the way it is. Now, I'm not a competitive Street Fighter player, obviously, but I do like the games to feel really precise, and I do think this is something that would genuinely make Street Fighter V feel a lot more responsive, because, man, sometimes people jump in and kick me in the face, and I could have swore I got an uppercut off, and this stuff definitely does affect that. Those 3 frames would have come 3 frames earlier, allowing the invincibility of the uppercut, allowing you to punch the crap out of someone as they jumped in at you. And it seems that finally, through some official words of the guys that are actually making Street Fighter V, they are acknowledging this as an issue. Before, we didn't know if this was something that was supposed to be built into Street Fighter V. If they built this into the game for online purposes and it was built into the core title, every single version is going to have this amount of input delay between the PC version and the PS4 version, which is why they are pretty similar, and the players and competitive base would just have to deal with it. But now, this kind of changes everything. This means that this was an unintentional thing if Capcom is acknowledging it as something that they are looking into for future patches of Street Fighter V. They actually acknowledged it, which is kind of what I wanted them to do the most. At least look into it being something that they could possibly fix, because this is most likely a fixable issue. Although I'm no engineer or programmer by any means of the imagination, this was a huge problem with the PlayStation 4 version of Ultra Street Fighter 4, which had a few extra frames of delay on top of that one. It's funny because Street Fighter 5 actually has a very similar amount to the unpatched Ultra Street Fighter 4. That was eventually fixed. They brought the input delay back down to comparable levels of the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 version, which many people were accustomed to, especially the 360 version, because it was 1 frame faster, and then all of a sudden, they were okay with the PS4 version of Ultra Street Fighter 4 because it felt similar to what they had played before. Capcom did fix that one, and I only hope they're going to do something about Street Fighter V, because we just want our video games to feel good, right? Street Fighter V already feels good. It's an extremely functional game that a lot of people like its core mechanics, and they can only make that feel better, hopefully by fixing this issue. A lot of technical talk in this entire video, and this is something that's kind of near and dear to me because, like I said, I spent a lot of money over the past 10 years of my life investing in monitors and testing equipment to see how precise my game is performing in terms of classic games, especially 2D fighters, and brand new fighting games. Like I said, you just want it to feel as good as it possibly can, and I'm a little obsessed with that. That and frame rates. For some reason, I have this odd infatuation with frame rates. Either way, guys, let me know what you think about this entire issue with Street Fighter V. Is it something that goes relatively unnoticed to you? Do you actually pay attention to your television in terms of what monitor lag you have? Do you have one of the classic Evo monitors? Did you even know this type of stuff existed? Let me know in the comments below, guys. I really appreciate it, and I'll be back with more information as soon as we know more about the future of what Capcom could be doing with Street Fighter V and a patch for the issue of its frame delay. My name is Max, and I'll see you next time.